All right.
Alright, by show of hands, how many of y'all are football fans? Alright, that's a good amount. How many of you, whenever you see, a receiver go over, try and catch a ball, and you see that defender just come and just hit him just right with his helmet in his chest and flies around, the ball shoots up in the air, the crowd makes that noise, everybody gets all excited, and then that disappointment what you feel whenever they throw that flag in there, and you know that they're counting it as an illegal hit, and the player's probably going to end up being fined by the NFL. Thinking about the way this has affected the sport in the NFL is that it's causing players to hesitate a lot and causing, like for instance, people talk all the time about poor tackling in the NFL, and at the same time they're not allowed to hit people the way that they were taught to whenever they were growing up, being taught the sport. Today I'm going to inform you of the NFL's policy on helmet-to-helmet contact and give you a revised policy and suggest what the NFL might be like in the future. First off, the rule for helmet-to-helmet contact is that the player is not allowed to lead with their helmet and strike another player in their helmet in any way. This rule is both illegal and finable and can possibly cause suspensions of players. The fines that have been given out to this point have been ranging from $5,000 to $75,000, and according to the New York Times, 16 players in 2010 were fined for helmet-to-helmet hits. And of these players, multiple players were fined more than once. For instance, James Harrison, a linebacker for the Steelers, was fined 3 times for $100,000 for illegal hits. And also, not all of these hits were penalized during the game. So, while they made this play, they were thinking that it was okay. The referees who are taught and trained to know the rules thought it was okay, but then the NFL saw the results of the player being injured and decided that they needed to hand out a fine. Brandon Jacobs, who is a running back for the New York Giants, who's actually one of the players who's supposed to be being protected by this rule, has actually called a lot of the penalties and fines insane, being quoted. Rydell, which is the manufacturer of helmets for the NFL, has conducts multiple researches and studies to try and form the best helmets they can to protect from concussions and other head injuries and make playing safer. For instance, we have the Revolution Speed, which is the highest rated helmet in football, and you see a lot of players wearing it at the college level, NFL level. And with all of the research and the money that Rydell puts into creating these helmets, which they do thousands of different angles and speeds and accelerations and thousands of different scenarios of which types of impacts cause concussions and other head injuries, so that they can increase padding in those places and make them safer. And with all this, the NFL really justified in fining and suspending and penalizing players. My policy change is really simple. It's just to let the players play, essentially, and for the NFL, which gets a substantial amount of money each year for an income, to give some of it to Rydell to help them increase their studies and research where they can come up with safer helmets. For instance, Rydell has come up with a new helmet called the 360, which is supposed to be their next helmet that's supposed to help protect players. And by eliminating the helmet-to-helmet contact rule, that wouldn't be, I'm not saying that players should be allowed to just run around and do anything they want. They shouldn't be clubs use unnecessary roughness or hit players late after the whistle's blown or if they run out of bounds or anything like that. But they've been coached to tackle and hit players with their helmet, with their head, ever since they started playing football. It's the way that you teach people to tackle. And also the large amount of fines that have happened, not just the fine, like I said, there were 16 players fined, many of them multiple times, but the penalties, not every penalty is fined. So it's happening a lot, and the fines and things aren't really keeping it from happening because the players they're not going to start hesitating. And also, even if they were, it's going to happen anyways, like just how they're holding penalties every game, even though everyone knows it's illegal. There's still going to be penalties there's still going to be instances where a player is going to leave with their helmet, either by accident or just not being aware. And in the future, I think if we implement these policies of increasing, giving more money to Rydell to help them improve their research, I think that this could help the NFL a lot with giving them higher ratings, making their players safer, because in the end, the only real way you can protect players from concussions and head injuries is to have better helmets, because they're going to, that's why you wear them, is because you get hit in the head. No matter what happens, it's going to happen. And so really the only way to protect them is by having better helmets. And really the only way, unfortunately for fans, there's not really a way to affect any rule changes. There's not really ways to come into contact with the commissioner in the NFL, other than, maybe you could try and talk to him on Twitter, but I don't see how that would really be effective in any way. But I think there's enough fans to show that they're disapproving of this rule and its overall ineffectiveness. I think that, because you hear people talking about it on SportsCenter and things about how the rule, the players getting fined, it's not really working, not really helping to protect players. But they also, that they need to do something to help protect players. And that's where Rydell comes in with giving them money for research. But I think that if enough fans show a disliking for the rule, that it could help change it and result in a safer, more entertaining football.